All right, on to our top story. Egyptian President Mohamed Morsi refuses to step down. Instead, he's proposing an interim coalition government until a parliamentary election is held within the next few months. And now the world is in wait-and-see mode as the Egyptian military decides how they are going to respond. Here, what are the possible scenarios? Well, I'll tell you what. Let's ask the experts. Former U.S. Ambassador to Syria and Israel, Edward Djerejian, Amy Hawthorne, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council's Rafik Hari Center for the Middle East, and Robert Hardy, Principal and Analyst at Geostrat. Ambassador, let's start with you. What is the likelihood that the military accepts Mr. Morsi's compromise?
The indications to date, and this is obviously such a fast-moving situation, we simply don't know, is that they will not accept Morsi's specific proposals. I think what the military is going to try to do is to basically put in place some form of transitional national government. This will probably imply the suspension of the Constitution, establishing some sort of constituent assembly to draft a new constitution, and then put in place what they call a roadmap as to how Egypt can evolve politically. I think the key fact in all of this is that is Egypt going to go forward with the politics of inclusion, which by that I mean by trying to put together a new government, a political system where all the important core constituencies participate, pluralism, or is it going to become a divisive situation? I hope it's the former, not the latter. Yeah, certainly we all do. Amy Hawthorne, can you shed some light on what the road forward might look like? The ambassador just highlighted, in effect, two very different pathways.
Yes, I think there are three factors that we all need to be watching very carefully in the hours and days ahead. The first is if the military does step in and push President Morsi from power, what role the military assigns for itself directly in the political process. Will it be behind the scenes, kind of overseeing things, or will it assume direct executive power in some form? This is the first question. The second question is what happens with the Islamists, the Muslim Brotherhood, and other Islamist groups that support President Morsi? Will they be arrested? Will there be a violent crackdown? Will they go quietly? This is critical for the future stability of Egypt. And third, what is the reaction of the street? The millions of Egyptians protesting against President Morsi are huge in size, but they want different things. They have different visions for the future of Egypt. And so how will the street react to whatever roadmap the military presumably proposes?
And I want to bring in Robert Hardy. He's right beside me here. Robert, what is your take on the possibilities that Ann just outlined, what this means for investors?
Okay, well, let's start with what the ambassador said and what Ann said. Morsi actually said he envisions a consensus government. I could almost give you a 90% guarantee that the Muslim Brotherhood will not be included in the military's plans for the future. The military has had it with the Muslim Brotherhood. I was hearing that as early as last February. They've been actually warning them since December about chaos in the streets and how they just wouldn't stand for it.
But remember, Robert, this is an elected government. The people of Egypt elected Mr. Morsi and the Muslim Brotherhood.
They did indeed elect Morsi with a 51.7% plurality. He got about 17 million votes, and they opted for democracy, but not his style of democracy, which is more like where you rule by decree. And I would like to say that democracy not supported by a culture of liberty leads to tyranny. And that's what the people of Egypt are seeing. Even the Islamists, even those groups are fighting. If you notice, the Al-Noor party, the Salafis have drawn away from the Muslim Brotherhood.
What you're saying effectively is that President Morsi pulled off a bait and switch. He said he was going to create a coalition government, and in fact, he did the opposite. Is that your assertion?
Correct. Well, actually, he's being run by Khair al-Shatter, who is the brain trust of the Muslim Brotherhood, who, by the way, is on the run after his bodyguards were arrested on Monday for killing 8 demonstrators who tried to sack the Muslim Brotherhood headquarters in Cairo.
So I want to hold that thought there, Robert. Ambassador, I want to bring you in here. I mean, basically, are we just watching a slow motion coup d'etat?
We may be, but let's look at it in a geopolitical frame of reference. We have a precedent here in 1992, the Algerian elections, where the Algerian Muslim the Islamic Party, Salvation Front, was poised to win those elections in '92. The military stepped in. It was a military coup. They just drummed out the Islamists. Now, remember what happened in Algeria for years later. Over 100,000 people died, and there was civil unrest throughout the country for decades. So I think what one has to hope for in Egypt is, and one of your speakers, I think, is right, Morsi basically fumbled the ball, and the Muslim Brotherhood fumbled the ball in power by not adopting the policies of inclusion and really marginalizing the people, many of the people in the groups that you see in the streets in Cairo. That was a fundamental mistake. They tried to consolidate power. They did not try to adopt pluralism, which is a key factor in democracy. So again, the future, whatever the military does, what I hope it does, is able to provide a framework whereby there can begin to be some consensus politics in Egypt, so that while there may be a rapid victory overnight for the people demonstrating in the streets, the opposition, the liberals, the secularists, but that in the long term, they put in place a structure that will represent all the Egyptian people.
Obviously, all of this takes time, Mr. Ambassador. Amy Hawthorne, maybe you can help us understand what the military might be debating at this moment and why we haven't heard from them.
Well, the military is in discussions, have been holding meetings with key political forces in Egypt. Clearly, they're trying to figure out a way forward that will have buy-in from the key political groups in Egypt. Reports say that they did invite the Muslim Brotherhood political party to join those meetings, oddly enough, but that party refused. I think I agree with what Ambassador Djerejian said, that pluralism and consensus is crucial to Egypt, and probably the basic flaw with Egypt's transition since February 2011, when President Mubarak was pushed out of power, is that there has never been a democratic roadmap, a roadmap for democracy that all key political forces in Egypt have agreed on. First, it was the military making an arrangement with the Islamists to the exclusion of other groups in Egypt, and now we might see the military doing a deal with non-Islamist groups and excluding the Islamists.
Robert Hardy.
The only way Egypt is going to be stable is if all groups agree on the basic rules of the game.
Robert, final word to you.
Well, I want to emphasize how important economics are. Egypt was actually on a downslope, and that's what really threw Mubarak out. It was economics that created the Arab Spring. Economics are going to be the key to saving Egypt from becoming a failed state. And let me mention that Turkey and Prime Minister Erdogan is watching very carefully on what happens in Egypt for fear that it may spring over into Turkey. Also, the Suez Canal will be protected. I think the oil flow will continue. Ship traffic is moving normally. Egypt is a very, very important beacon in the region, and everyone's watching it.
Certainly everyone has a vested interest, and we appreciate the perspective of our entire panel. Our thanks to Ambassador Edward Djerejian, Amy Hawthorne, and Robert Hardy. Thank you, one and all.